Can you all see me if I don't go up on the thing? Yes? Okay. Okay, is that better? So I'll keep it close. Then can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, normally I'm pretty loud, but I'll see how I go. So I'm Tammi Jonas, vegetarian, academic turned pig farmer and butcher. That's how they normally describe me. Just quickly, like why I'm a pig farmer when I was a vegetarian in the past. Like many people here, I was really concerned about how food was grown and where it came from. And I chose for many years to be a vegetarian because I couldn't be assured that animals weren't being raised in cages and treated horribly. I wasn't a vegetarian because I thought it was immoral to eat meat. It was because I thought it was immoral to raise animals in cages. So there's a pure logic, in my view, to then eventually becoming a pig farmer, because if you can't work out whether it's being grown properly, what do? You go and grow it yourself. And that's sort of the way Stuart and I, my husband and I, do everything. Every time we encounter a problem that somebody else hasn't solved, we go and solve it ourselves. Not that there aren't a lot of other beautiful free-range pig farmers in Australia, and a growing number of them, which I'm very pleased to be amongst. So we became farmers about 3 years ago, left our jobs in the city. I'd been banging on about food ethics for a much longer time than the 3 years since, but I needed to go and become a producer to see whether that kind of urban activist stuff that I was talking about was actually achievable for farmers, and whether what producers were facing was in fact insurmountable, and in fact we needed to have the pigs in cages. So off we went, because of course that's what you do. You go from being an academic and an avid gardener to raising pigs for a living. It was a huge learning curve, and we were supported by a lot of farmers in our region, and actually we went to America and visited farmers to see how they were doing things. You know, typical researchers, we did a lot of research, but still on the day that you had to build your first fence, that was really hard. We're quite good at building fences now, and we do a lot of it. Farming is 70% fencing. So then our next problem we encountered, though, after we learned how to raise the pigs, was slaughtering and butchering, and small producers of livestock encounter enormous issues with an abattoir that's close to them, that they can trust, and then finding a butcher to actually butcher your meat if you're not selling directly into conventional markets. Now, if you're raising beef cattle and you're selling into conventional markets and you're like some of our neighbours, you're getting $2 a kilo for that beef. Because we control our supply chain and sell directly to our customers, we get about $20 a kilo for our beef. So we can make a living as farmers because we do everything ourselves. That's a story that the Fair Food movement needs to keep telling about how to make farming viable. It's about cutting out the bajillion middle people who are taking too much of a cut from what the farmers actually spend their whole lives raising. So the second part of our journey was when the butchering was a problem. We decided, to make the story short, we'll become butchers as well. So I went and apprenticed with our butcher for 6 months, and I'm the butcher on the farm. And we did our first crowdfunding last year, and we raised $26,000 to build our boning room on the farm and farm gate retail shop. So we finished that in January. We got our license, and we've been doing all of that and direct deliveries since. We turned our first profit that same month because we took over control of that supply chain. The next thing we decided was, oh, well, there's no ethical salami in this country, and curing, I mean, what do you do with pork? You cure it, right? It's delicious. So we just finished a campaign 3 weeks ago and raised $33,000 from the community to build a curing room and commercial kitchen so that we can do further value add to the products right there on the farm. So we'll be selling farmstead salami by about January, we think. The crowdfunding story, I think, is critical to the future of sustainable agriculture, because we know about community-supported agriculture, the box systems where you can subscribe up front. The farmer knows that they have enough people to buy their product. Some of those people they pay the year up front, or some will pay on a monthly schedule, and we run a CSA at our farm as well. Crowdfunding is simply a CSA. It's getting people to pre-order your product. So the money that we raised, all of the rewards to the people who supported us are pork, so this time fresh and cured. Last time it was just fresh product. And we just think it's fantastic that instead of feeding shareholders and banks, we can feed our local community who supported us to build our infrastructure that we needed to run a viable farm. And so I want to finish actually by just sort of talking about then, if you're not a producer, I mean, if you're a producer, I would strongly recommend take control of the supply chain and sell directly to people. It's also brilliant because the community supports you just as you do them. You're like, I'm going to grow you food that you can believe in, and then they support you in return, and there's loyalty, and they pass on to other people what you're doing. It's just the most wonderful community to be amongst. We love what we do. But I would say then, if you're not a producer, supporting people in those ways. There's an increasing number of farmers who are crowdfunding for their infrastructure to do exactly this kind of model. And if you see it, and especially if it's in your community and you can be part of that story, support them, because what they're trying to do is make sure you know where your food comes from, and you can support them and their families in doing it. Farmers markets are an obvious place also to be buying food if you can. I understand that there are not really farmers markets in this particular region. Maybe you need to get one going. Maybe you need to talk to your producers in the region and see if you could set up a farmers market, because then they'd have access to the local markets. Right now, they're probably selling through all the traditional channels and not making a very good living, and you're losing a bunch of farmers if that's the case, because they're not staying on the land when they can't make any money. So supporting them to set up a market, a VFMA accredited one, so you know it's real farmers selling real food to people. There's that sound. So yes, so I would say the best way to support a farmer is, like, quite literally buy from them. Do a bit of research. There are a lot of them around, and especially this region is full of producers. So that's it from me.